Hi and welcome to this video from AKCP, and today we're going to be looking at the asset features of our AKCPro Server software. So this is a world-class central management software. You can see here I've already got a desktop set up which has our thermal maps where we can see the temperature at the front and rear of the cabinet, our temperature differential front to rear, and we've also got various other data over here on the right side, such as temperatures and humidity, and our sensor status light, which can give us warning as to a sensor's particular status. What we're going to look at today, like I said though, is our assets. So we can add assets to these rack maps. You can see currently all our asset slots here are empty, but I'm going to show you how to set this up from scratch. So we'll start off by creating a new workspace. We'll choose a rack map layout, and we'll call this our asset tracking desktop. So now we have this set up, we can add a new rack map, which we'll call our asset map. Now you can input the size of this rack. So this is 42 U's. This is editable, of course, but we'll leave it at the default of 42. And then we can label the front and rear of the cabinet, front and rear. And then down here we can begin to input some parameters for our rack. So this can be based on the manufacturer's specifications. So if I have a cabinet and it's rated to be able to hold, let's say, a maximum of 750 kilograms of equipment, I input that information here. And then our max current, this is going to be based on the electrical specifications of the breaker panel that you have coming into this particular cabinet, say. So if I have a maximum allowable current for this cabinet of, say, 15 amps before my breaker is likely to be tripping. So now when we begin to add assets to the cabinet, we can make sure that we're not going to be exceeding these two parameters, that our assets are not going to be greater than 15 amps based on the manufacturer's rating of those assets, and also based on the weight of those assets, that we're not going to exceed the maximum amount of weight that's allowable in this cabinet. So we hit add, and you'll see now that shows up in our rack maps on the left side here, and we can drag that onto the screen, and here we have now our asset map. Our current load is at the moment 0 amps because we have no assets in here, and our weight is 0 out of 750 kilos because again we have no assets. Now here you can see we have a bunch of assets already added to this server, and we're just going to edit some of those. So you can click on this button here and go to edit, and now here we can input again parameters for this, such as the weight of the asset and the current consumption. So let's say this particular asset is 15 kilos and it consumes 1.5 amps. We hit the update button, and then we can drag this onto our rack, showing where it is. So let's say this is occupying our top 4 U's here. And once we've added this, you can see now our current load is 1.5 out of 15 amps, and our weight is 15 out of 750 kilos. So we still have sufficient overhead to add new equipment to this cabinet. Let's now take, for example, our gigabit switch, and we'll edit this asset. So the weight of this, maybe 10 kilos, and the current consumption 2 amps. Now with this one, we're going to link it with a virtual sensor. So you can create a sensor or select one. So we'll go to select a virtual sensor, and we will choose the ping. So when you are pinging this device, this virtual sensor will send a ping to the switch, if this is a managed switch, for example. And if the ping times out, then you're going to get an alert. So we'll update this and drag it also into our cabinet here. So now you can see it's green because the ping is reachable. And also you can see now our current load is 3.5 out of 15 amps, and our weight is now 25 out of 750 kilos. Now if we were to add sufficient equipment and populate this cabinet so that it was exceeding the weight, so let's say take our patch panel here, and let's purposely put in some extreme numbers so you can see what happens when we exceed the weight. So this asset is 750 kilos and it consumes 20 amps. If we were to then add this, you see we now get a pop-up information that tells us that the maximum current load and weight of the asset map will be exceeded. Are you sure you want to place this into the cabinet? If we say yes anyway, you'll see now our current load is 23.5 out of 15 available amps and it's turned red, and our weight is 775 out of 750 kilos. So therefore we are overloading this cabinet. We've overloaded it with too much weight, and we're also drawing far too much current here if we turned everything on in this cabinet, and we're likely to trip our breakers. So therefore you may want to remove this asset from the map, and you'll see now we go back to within permissible parameters here. So this is very useful for planning data center expansion. If you're going to be adding equipment to a cabinet, if you're going to be expanding your data center in any way, you can use these asset maps to set up each cabinet and decide where you're going to place the extra equipment. You know, do I have sufficient weight or power overhead available in order to add new devices into this cabinet? So I hope that's been a useful insight into the asset tracking feature of AKCPro Server, and I'll see you next time for some more tutorials and overviews of the various features we have in this software. If you have any questions, then please don't hesitate to contact us, and you can visit our website www.akcp.com, where you can also download a free version of AKCPro Server and begin playing around with it yourself. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.